Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Live at the Waterhole session on this fine Sunday. It's me, myself, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your guide for the session. We're starting at Mantis Founders Lodge today with some sleepy rhinos hugging a bit of shade under the trees there. Just a reminder, the show's live and interactive, so please feel free to pass through your questions and comments. I'll do my best to answer them, or might even open up some interesting discussions for us. If you hear a few excited bird calls there, I think they sound like wagtails to me. Unfortunately not on screen, they're just hopping around. Could also be sparrows, but seems like quite a peaceful Sunday in the Eastern Cape. The wind is blowing a bit there, that's for sure. Not uncommon for that part of the world. Can see those large satellite-like dish ears of the rhinos scanning around, listening and flicking a few unwanted flies. They always remind me of radars scanning around. See, we've got I was going to say majestic, but maybe that's not the right word for a blessbok. They're always clowning around and hopping around a bit. Seems like it's getting a bit of a drink of water here. Can hear it sloping up the water. I think the flies are bothering it a bit there. Of course, the rhinos aren't too bothered about its passing presence. Probably smelt and heard it a while ago, but I think it would take quite a bit to bother them at this point. Jive Bunny, good morning to you. It is certainly a treat to enjoy watching the antics of these rhinos at Mantis. It's a wonderful camera. I think it gives us an opportunity that we will not often be afforded to observe rhinos like this in the wild or at a lot of the locations. Blade, you'd like to know how old are these rhinos? From this angle, I'm not incredibly sure. They are in their prime, or they are quite mature, but it's a bit challenging without seeing a bit of a size comparison or how they relate to each other. But yeah, these are two relatively mature rhinos. Of course, in the quite a few years ago, you could maybe gauge a rhino's age roughly by the size of its horn. But obviously with anti-poaching activities and the removal of rhino horns to deter poachers, that does impact that way of getting an idea roughly how old the rhino may be, since they won't necessarily, they will wear their horns down naturally in nature, but not to the extent that it would be non-existent, of course. Anyway, gonna leave these sleeping rhinos to carry on snoozing, and we're gonna head over to Tembe, but I see there's a bit of a big fly on the one's nose there. Now we have a miniature rhinoceros, the ever-present warthogs here at Tembe. Also have a nice close-up of some jacanas strutting around. It's quite interesting to see them coming this far out away from the water. It looks like two younger birds. I'm sure they're trying to make the most of any disturbed insects that the warthog is maybe flushing or disturbing, and also probably just a good foraging opportunity for these birds. But normally you will find them quite closely associated with water or on water lilies and other floating vegetation. Not very normal to see them running around on land like this. I must say this warthog is definitely getting in its dose of grass today. There was an impala zipping past. Surely just some antics. The impala have started rutting through most of southern Africa, so probably find there is an impala ram sowing havoc in the herd there, chasing all the females around. The fact that the warthog does not seem too concerned says to me it's business as usual around the Tembe waterhole. It seems like this warthog's either missing a bit of its ear, or the other ear is maybe just a bit damaged. You can see the other one's pricked up and listening. The other one can't see it too well. Sure, it's not such a problem for it though. And off that warthog goes to continue his day there. Looks like he's got a spring in his step. Of course, some wonderful birding action here at Lentor. We just quickly switched over. This is one of the starling species. I'm trying to get a grasp on it. Quite a white eye. Of course, the East African birds and Kenya birds are a bit of my weakness. I need to practice more and more on them. That looks like a monkey over there. Let's see the starling a bit more. I will fathom a guess. but there is quite a few different species of starlings in Kenya. I have learned my lesson taking guesses on some of the species. And I don't think this is a superb starling. I haven't seen its frontal view, but I don't think it's a superb starling. It's got quite a long tail, etc. Now I must say, with that white eye, it definitely could be. Oh, he's moved off. I'm sure we'll maybe get a better view just now. Didn't seem like the monkey bothered it too much. Looks like it was just carrying on with its daily business. I'm leaning towards it being Rupel's starling. If anyone's a bit more knowledgeable on that part of the world, please feel free to correct me, sorry. But just with that longish tail, etc., doesn't look like our typical superb starling, excuse me. It's quite a bit like a Rupel starling to me. See, Cornelia mentioned it's Rupel starling, so we reached the same conclusion. It's always good to get a secondary opinion, especially when you are going out on a limb or you're not familiar with the area species. Also find it's a great way to learn like that, when you try to figure it out a bit yourself and then check the answers afterwards or confer with others. It tends to stick in your brain a bit better. Of course, it is also maybe fascinating and terrifying at the same time with the advent of AI and the ability to identify birds' pictures. I think it's good because it helps some people, but also I think also to an extent it might lessen people's field ability. They do of course have limitations. A lot of these apps will not work with signal, etc. So if you're on a remote part of the world, or you're not going to be able to make use of those features. But certainly the way the world is going, I've got a nice little weaver taking a bath here. Gannet mantis. Trying to get a good view. Almost looks a bit like a cape weaver, to be honest. That white eye, or that bright pale eye, that's what's sending me down that that line. It does definitely look like a cape weaver. I think that is definitely it. Seems like our sleepy rhinos are getting a bit of a move on. I'm not sure if it's due to some of these pesky flies that are harassing them. Before we left them, there was quite a large fly on this one's forehead. I can imagine, even though they've got tough skin, those flies will find a soft spot to harass the rhinos or try bite them. I can only imagine how unpleasant that must be. Biting insects are certainly a punishment I do not wish upon anyone. It's quite a... Well, I'm always quite thankful in South Africa we don't have tsetse flies. I've been bit once or twice by them, and I'm eternally grateful that where I live there are no tsetse flies. It's not a pleasant experience. Apologies, I only saw your question now, Nina. You were asking what is the best way to start birding. It seems daunting. I would say the best way to start is just to take it slow. I'd always been exposed to a bit of bird watching through our family trips when I was younger, and it was only in my 20s when I decided to go for a walk in one of the wildlife estates in Hoedspruit, and I thought, well, I'll install one of the apps on my phone and I'm gonna do my best and try figure them out. And it is quite daunting. There's quite a few birds to learn or to sift through, especially it depends on the region you're in. I think one nice thing with the bird apps is it can filter your GPS location, so you only rarely see birds that are in your area, and that makes it a whole lot easier. But yeah, I think it's just to take it slow. Don't put expectations on yourself or pressure, and definitely, like they say, bird by color. Focus on the color, the bill size, the size of the bird, those type of features. And I mean, obviously if you can take pictures, that makes it much easier because you can go sit and review and try figure it out. But it's kind of like a lifelong journey or a bit of a hobby. You get better at it the more you try. It's kind of like jogging or exercising. It's a bit difficult in the beginning, but as you get sharper and your practice starts to pay off, you get better at bird calls, you start to understand different habitats. It certainly gets easier and easier, but yeah, focus on the smaller things like colors and certain diagnostic features, as they say. We've got a nice giraffe here at Safari Hook. It's amazing how how quickly it's starting to dry up here in the Etosha side of the world. Of course, it's very normal considering it is a very arid region. Also have quite a lazy grey heron on one of the logs there. I say every time we visit Safari Hook, I find myself daydreaming. I really would love to do a trip to this part of the world again. It's unfortunately just quite far from the Kruger region, but life's a journey, and it's always worthwhile going to explore different parts of the world.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
For over 10 years, we have been devoted to tracking and protecting endangered mammals in South Africa. But we can't do this alone. We need your help. Join our Art for Conservation worldwide online auction, showcasing work from incredible wildlife artists. Your winning bid contributes directly to the protection of these mammals. For more, visit voucherlegacy.co.za.
My name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is Paul. And I mean, to be able to share it with all of you. Fingers crossed, and I'll make sure I wear my lucky leopard socks as well.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
Of course, the camera here is near the lodge, so it would not surprise me maybe if there's a few guests that are maybe grabbing the giraffe's attention. I can see a grey-headed heron moving at the back there, just offer the knowledge that a grey heron is not really a terrestrial heron, and your grey heron is. Your black-headed heron is the terrestrial one, and your grey heron will hunt and forage near water. Also the springbok coming in there. I'm sure there's quite a few coming, but interesting to see this giraffe pacing up and down looking for a spot to drink. I think something certainly has its attention, and it always pays to be a bit cautious, of course. It seems like a giraffe is maybe settling on a spot to drink water. Of course, it does make sense to be extra cautious if you want to make yourself vulnerable for a drink. It can be a costly mistake if you pick the wrong time or place, if there is predators lurking. And of course that comes back to survival of the fittest. And maybe the wisest. You don't get old in nature by taking chances or not being cautious. There starts the gymnastic routine. Ooh, with a bit of a shift there, some loose ground or something spooked him a little bit. I'm saying him, I actually do think this is a cow. I was just looking at the ossicones or giraffe horns as they're known. It doesn't look very bald at the top. There's a bit of hair on top, so I believe this is a cow. But she's certainly being quite cautious, not feeling too comfortable. Settling down again for a more relaxed drink. Maybe this is something that spooked it, and it's a bit more confident that the risk is no longer there, or there isn't an impending threat or risk. I must say, of all the animals of the bush, I think giraffes are the epitome of grace. They always look very graceful the way they stroll around the African bush or savanna, and even when they drink they appear incredibly graceful. It's tough to believe that they could deliver a kick that's strong enough to kill a lion. So they do command a lot of respect, that's for sure. Also, unfortunately, many people have been also injured by giraffes for underestimating their grace and peaceful nature for defenseless. And it's what's important to always respect or give animals the respect they deserve, and not irresponsibly approach them too closely or make them feel threatened. You can see there's quite a potent wind blowing in the area. It's really whipping up the water, and you can see the trees really swaying in the wind. An occasional bout of dust also flashing past. But quite a windy day in Etosha actually. There has been some very interesting weather throughout southern Africa the last week or so, especially South Africa. Most of the northern half of the country has been inundated with more rain. I would say not enough to really cause flooding as that of which we saw earlier in the year in the Kruger region, but there was a couple of rivers that picked up their water levels substantially. But it's quite nice to have some sunshine. You can see the Springbok have also had their fill there. They're heading back out into the bush. Continue their midday grazing and foraging. It's always beautiful to see them. They're quite pretty antelopes for me. I see there's still a few coming through. Quite a big herd actually. And these look like some females. Also we have our black-headed heron out there foraging. All in all, I think quite a pleasant day out in Etosha. Good spot to sit back with a book and soak up the sun's rays. I'm sure it's not too hot. Winter's starting to set in. It's actually quite pleasant to be in the sun in the winter months in Africa. Couple nice giraffe relatable or relating questions coming in. Rose, you'd like to know, is it true that their saliva is very sticky? So yeah, it is. They do have quite a thick, sticky saliva. Obviously it helps protect their mouths when they're feeding on thorny plants like acacias, as they used to be known, or vachelias. Saliva coats the thorns a bit and reduces damage, almost like a bit of a natural lubricant. But you can imagine also any cuts they do get in the mouth, that saliva also aids in coagulating it, and that's why you see a lot of animals do lick themselves when they're injured. But yeah, obviously that thick saliva will be an adaptation to feeding on spiky and prickly plants. The next question I saw was from Kathy. You were asking how much water would a giraffe swallow at a time. So it's a bit different. It's a bit easier to work it out with an elephant. I think we have got a better idea how much they can fit in their trunk before they push it into their mouths or transfer it to their mouths, whereas a giraffe drinks continuously. But it's been said that generally they drink up about 30 to 40 liters in one go or one sitting. Obviously they don't drink often, and we saw it is quite a precarious position. So when they do, they'll make it count. So that's generally the amount of water that they're gulping in. And the last question was from Marilyn. You wanted to know if giraffes need to drink every day. And the answer is no, they don't. They can go quite a few days, sometimes even weeks without drinking. They get a lot of their moisture from the plant or the leaves that they eat, and they are quite adapted to arid environments if you look at where you find them throughout southern Africa and the rest of Africa for that matter. Anyway, it was quite a nice little time we spent with the giraffe and a few of the other animals here at Safari Hook. We're going to pop on back to Lentor. I was wondering what those were for a second, but we've got some peaceful warthogs here at Lentor. And we could also hear a few interesting dove calls in the background. I'm not sure if these warthogs have maybe finished drinking. It does look like they may be just foraging in the vicinity. Quite a few butterflies also around here. And the warthogs are looking nice and relaxed. I'm wondering if that's an interestingly shaped branch or a bird. Oh, there is something moving there. I think it's the monkeys though. A bit of chaos taking place. I think the monkeys are either having some internal disputes. I don't know if I heard some clapping, so you might find they are harassing the lodge. It's very natural behavior of monkeys. Also have a squirrel doing its thing over there. There was a pretty butterfly there for a second, but disappeared rather rapidly. I must say that's one facet of nature watching I have not gotten too good at, is butterfly identification. We've just come over to Safari Hook and there's some zebra madness taking place, dust bathing, and I don't know if there's some social disagreement, but also quite a lot of zebras coming in, so this is also quite pretty. You've also got a wildebeest intermingling with the zebra, obviously safety in numbers, but quite a nice zebra herd coming in. It's amazing with all these zebras coming in, it's as if a cloud of dust is coating them, or there really is quite a few hooves trampling up all the sound, all the dust and soil. Got a few more wildebeest coming in, so obviously it's a wildebeest herd that's associating with these zebras. Of course, still very much part of the safety in numbers thing. Why be alone when you could team up together to keep an eye out for predators? Also a few springbok also loitering on the fringes. Of course, the zebras are quite boisterous compared to the wildebeest and springbok that are, I would say, have an air of maybe grace or a bit more better behaved. The zebras look like they are going wild. Almost a bit like a wild biker gang arriving at the waterhole. You see there's a bit of a disagreement taking place there, a bit of fighting and biting. Now imagine these are two stallions having a bit of a disagreement, but it's also fascinating how much zebras can fight with each other. It does not matter the age or the sex, they will kick and bite each other quite freely. I was at a property earlier in the week and we had some zebras nearby grazing on the lodge's lawn, and I don't know, something set them off, but they were kicking in every direction. Even the young zebras were kicking adult females, and it was actually quite chaotic. And it's also quite frightening being that close to them when they do get a bit wild. Massive number of springbok also coming in here. This is actually just fantastic to witness and observe. It's also one thing I remembered from my time in Etosha on a trip there. Just the sheer number of animals coming in to drink at the waterholes. It's as if they appear out of nowhere. Of course, the water is quite a bit of a magnet for them, especially in these dry parts of the world. Roy, you have quite an interesting question. You'd like to know why can herbivores mingle peacefully despite competing for the same water sources and vegetation? So yeah, it might look like they're all competing with each other, and I guess it seems like it when we associate them as herbivores or grass eaters. But the species in this example, like zebra, wildebeest, and springbok, are actually all using the same resource in slightly different ways. So your zebras are bulk grazers, they eat long, coarse grass, not too selective. And your wildebeest, with their more square-shaped, flatter mouths, tend to prefer shorter, greener grass that often grows after zebras have grazed. So it's a good example there how the two depend on one another, but once again, not actually competing for the same resource. And your springbok can switch between grazing and browsing, so they feed on shrubs and forbs and small little bushes as well. So it's not really, instead of direct competition, excuse me, they're actually complementing each other by utilizing the resources in different ways. Obviously, the water is not really competition in this circumstance. Obviously, as it gets quite dry, it's a bit more desperation to come drink, etc. But there's not really a big competition for the water so much. I know we see elephants being a bit possessive or aggressive with other animals at water sources, but there's not really a competition for water. I think leading on to that, someone actually, Eagle Lover, you were asking if the water holes in Namibia are pumped or natural. So of course the pans themselves are natural depressions and are pre-existing, but they would eventually dry up. So all the pans in Etosha are pumped, or generally are. Obviously the ones that aren't will eventually dry up, but for this example, the one here at Safari Hook is an artificial or a pumped waterhole, maybe in a natural area. I see we have a zebra lying flat on the ground there. I think it's actually just taking a bit of a rest. Funny spot to choose, but can see its ears twitching there. Sometimes they do interesting things, zebras. Yeah, thanks for some of those questions. A couple interesting topics being brought up. It certainly adds to the nice atmosphere that we're having today on the show. It's nice to see the vast, I always love seeing huge numbers of wildebeest and zebra going about their business. It's one of my favorite, one of my many favorite pastimes, but I do enjoy sitting back and just watching them go about their business. Ooh, that zebra is getting a good dose of dust there. Well, we're going to leave all our herbivores here at Safari Hook and we're going to head over to Founders. It sounds like the rhinos are getting a bit more active. There we go, and it seems like they've gotten up for a bit of a midday drink. It's funny, it doesn't actually look that late, but it is essentially midday in South Africa. So I'm sure it is getting maybe not swelteringly hot, but it is warm enough to move around a bit and maybe quench your thirst. Even a mud bath if you so will it. Doesn't look like these rhinos have recently dipped in the mud. But they are certainly taking it quite easily and quite peaceful. Doesn't actually look like that one on the right. No, it is drinking. I can see its lips moving a bit there. It's wonderful to hear the audio that we get to hear here at Mantis. Some wonderful deep sounds coming from the rhinos. It just adds to the experience. Almost feels like you are there. It actually blows my mind how we're able to experience this in the 21st century. I grew up as a kid watching the first webcams, and they used to take a picture every, I think, 15 or 30 seconds. And there was always a lot of anticipation between the next photo coming in if something arrived. It's very nice to actually be able to not only watch a live feed, but also hear the sounds coming from the waterholes themselves. I must say the rhinos still look very docile or sleepy. I guess they're having quite a lazy Sunday. Not keen to do too much. Roz, it's only a pleasure. I'm glad if I can share some information or maybe share some ideas that get us all thinking. But it's actually just quite nice to spend time with like-minded people who also enjoy nature. Now we have a wonderful view of a rhino's backside. I often also enjoy laughing at that or giggling at it in nature. When you're trying to appreciate an animal that's maybe close by and all it shows you is its rear end. I do know there's also a few people out there that have their own challenges of trying to photograph most of the world's animals' backsides. It made me laugh the first time I heard that story. Kendall, you have a question asking how do rhino territories work? So it's quite interesting, but your rhino territories depend on the species, of course, but generally it's the males that hold the territories, especially in the case of white rhinos in this example. So a dominant bull will mark out an area using dung middens and urine spraying, and obviously they also wipe their feet or scrape their feet in their dung middens, and they basically leave a scent everywhere they go in their territory saying this space is taken or I am the bull, it's my neighborhood essentially. And the females in turn will have overlapping home ranges that they can move through several male territories if they wish, especially if there's good food and water. And in the species like the white rhinos, your territories can be quite well defined, and they can be a bit more tolerant. Whereas black rhinos, and once again it comes back to the habitat. I think with regards to white rhinos, if there's good grazing, good water, they can be a bit more tolerant. Whereas black rhinos, when they live in more arid environments where your water sources are limited, good browsing might be limited, the fights for territories can get a lot more serious. And we often see it with white rhinos that they tend to be a lot more gregarious. They associate a lot more with each other in groupings. Of course, it just has to do with any males in that situation must be submissive towards the dominant bull. He will not tolerate any aggressive behavior or assertive behavior.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Morning, you two. Hello.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
Looks like quite a few starlings swooping in. I assume they're drinking on the other side of the pan or the waterhole. But quite a bit of birds coming in. This bull certainly has some impressive ivory. A thick, large tusks. Looks like the left-hand side has taken a bit of a beating. He's definitely broken it on something. But such a beautiful specimen. He's a very big elephant bull. Wonderful to watch him just going about his business. It looks like he's capitalizing on the soft grasses and some of the other more aquatic vegetation growing there. So, certainly a peaceful meal, not a tough meal by any means. sure he could tell quite a few stories. Such a beautiful specimen. I really admire or enjoy a old elephant bull. Not that he's very old, but he's a very mature specimen in his prime. See, his tail still has some hair. He hasn't gone bald on his tail there, but his temples are quite full and stuff, and he looks quite in good condition, I'd say. Probably in his peak years. Maybe a little past then, but yeah, late 30s and his 40s, I'm sure. Just looking absolutely stunning. He's even giving us a bit of a pose there. It's as if he knows we're watching. Bella, you are asking if both genes and area inform if an elephant could be a tusker. So they do both play quite an important role. Of course, to grow exceptionally large tusks, a bull needs the right genetic potential. I think that's your starting spot. If those genes are not present, or then you don't really have the potential to get there. I'm really just awestruck by how beautiful this build is. Now that he's turned a bit, that right tusk is actually exceptionally large. It didn't look too big from the one angle there, but it's actually a very impressive elephant bull. But yeah, they also need the right conditions, so good nutrition, access to minerals, and the ability to live a long life. So as we know, tusks grow continuously, so only older bulls really reach that tusker status. It's not something that they reach early on in their lives. So yeah, that's kind of where the human factor plays out. If you're in areas of heavy poaching, big tusk elephants are non-existent and they've been removed from the population. So nowadays in the world we find ourselves in, true tuskers are quite rare, but where they are present, I think it is a good example of quite a safe and well conserved wildlife region. It's quite a nice opportunity or chance for us to admire this big bull. I must say, now that I see that other tusk, I would definitely consider him in the tusker region. It's a very long tusk, and I think if his left hand tusk was also not necessarily broken as much, he would be a very impressive bull. But he's pretty much there at that tusker zone. He is certainly just having quite a pleasant Sunday. I do agree, Jeff, it is incredibly tranquil. And as quickly as that, he's disappearing off into the African savannah again. Well, and now that our big elephant is gone, it's a bit quieter here, we're going to head up to Mahali, also in the Kenya region. A very gorgeous eland bull here grazing in the Masai Mara region. I wouldn't say he's... oh, he is quite big now, he is quite big. I thought he was a bit younger, but he's actually quite a pretty specimen. I'm not entirely sure, it looks like he's actually browsing on some short shrubs there. Not really a magnificent animal. Not always something we get to see too much of on the show. You can really see his large, well-formed dewlap there, and his fringe. Quite a nice specimen. They are certainly being treated to quite a bit of nice diversity on the show today, across all the regions. Some rather pretty bird calls coming out there in the background. Not entirely sure what it could be. There is a lot of grassland species that are quite good at singing melodious sounds, especially this part of the world, but would probably not be something I'm very familiar with. Oh, this bull is certainly looking quite elegant posing like that, or with his head up gazing across the savannah there. Really a big animal, they are impressive. Africa's largest antelope. as our eland keeps doing his thing and moving off into a bit of thicker vegetation, we're going to hop over to Rosie's pan to see what's going on there. Peaceful elephant having a drink of water here at Rosie's pan. Looks like I want to say a bit of a younger bull. I can't see the tusks too well. They look like short ivory. From this frontal view, his temples look a bit sunken in, but I still think a relatively young animal. Looks like a bull to me as well. Can't see any other animals around. Certainly taking it quite easy. Almost seems as if this elephant is just pondering its day a bit. Certainly taking it quite easy. Maybe he had a bit of a busy night and he's a bit lazy. Safari Bobby, you'd like to know if they drink slowly because they are aware they are safe. Obviously elephants generally most of the time feel quite safe. They are quite invulnerable to almost all things. It's only man that actually threatens them. Lions would maybe make them feel uncomfortable or defensive, but it's not like a fully grown elephant like this would actually have to worry about lions unless it's maybe a huge pride. But yeah, when they feel relaxed, they take their time to drink quite steadily, may even splash or play around a bit. Yeah, I think if they feel uneasy, they'll obviously do it more quickly or cautiously, or if they're maybe feeling hungry or they've got somewhere to be, they will obviously drink with purpose and head back off into the bush to carry on feeding. I think it depends on a couple of conditions. Same if it's maybe quite a hot day, drink and go rest elsewhere, or have their mud bath and then continue to rest. But it does certainly seem like if nothing's pressuring them, they will take their time and be quite relaxed about it. I must say, this bull is certainly having a very good splash, and the camera, the microphone part of me is really picking it up well. Can really hear all the action going on. Giving himself a good coat of mud that he's stirring up from the floor of the pan here. He even gave us a bit of a fart there, that was quite audible. It's always funny when you watch elephants close up like this at a hide or at a waterhole. You can often hear that. Anyway, our elephant's also slinking off. We're going to head over to Founders again. Oh, it's quite a nice surprise here at Founders today. We've had quite a few animals come through. We've got some giraffes having a nice sip. They are obviously, I was going to say they're quite peaceful, but it goes to show they are naturally cautious or jumpy when drinking. I don't think these giraffes have as much to fear. I don't think the lions of the Eastern Cape are major giraffe hunters. The prides are generally quite smaller around here, so I think the giraffes are just maybe a bit overly cautious, but I think these ones are rather safe.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
We invite you to a different kind of safari. Rugby and Safari by Wild Earth Travel brings UK supporters to South Africa for the Nations Championship 2026. Watch England, Scotland and Wales go head-to-head with the world champion Springboks. Then go beyond the stadium, from world-class rugby to luxury safari. Hosted by a South African rugby legend. This is the only way to tour South Africa. Rugby and Safari with Wild Earth Travel.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
This giraffe is certainly looking with a bit of curiosity at the water. I wonder if it's pondering another drink or noticing its reflection, but I think it's actually just going to have another drink of water. Just looking for a suitable spot to bend down. Bambi, you'd like to know, if a giraffe had to be collared, where on the body would it be? I would, just not speaking from personal experience, but maybe just a few opinions of my own. I think it's quite tricky to collar an animal with such a long neck. And the thing is, when it comes to collaring animals in the wild, it needs to be as little of a hindrance as possible. It mustn't affect the animal, because if your research is doing that, it is going to, for one, skew your results, and obviously the animal's not going to survive very well. So it's neither a benefit to your results nor the animal. So it always needs to be done in a way that's as unobtrusive as possible. But I would imagine that would sit quite low down on the neck, quite near the shoulders. So that's where the least movement is going to take place, and that's where the neck is the thickest, so it will probably sit quite a bit better there. I think if you had to put it further up, it could restrict feeding or movement. That collar could get stuck on a branch, etc., when it's trying to weave its way through maybe thick vegetation. I also think in the case of giraffes, there'd probably be other options that are better than necessarily a collar. So that maybe nowadays they use a lot of satellite earpiece or ear tags is the word I'm looking for. So I think that would probably be here's a good example of why a collar up there would not work well. We sell this giraffe as scratching its ear with the bit of the branch. Now you can imagine if it could get its collar in there, it could also manipulate it. But I do think an ear tag or something would probably be much more effective with regards to a giraffe. It would probably bother it the least and probably be the least unobtrusive. But I must say, I've actually never seen a tracking collar or tracking device myself on a giraffe. Not that I've noticed one. You might find researchers would also maybe rely more on pictures to track different individuals, etc., like that in studies. It was quite interesting to see that giraffe scratching its ear like that. And I think it requires quite a high level of dexterity to do that without hands and feet, etc., or hands specifically. But quite impressive nonetheless. Especially using a stick by your ear, I think you have to be quite careful. It was quite entertaining to watch a giraffe when they're chewing their food. They look incredibly unbothered about the world. Nothing really fazing them. I generally only start to feel that way once I've had my first cup of coffee in the morning. I was thinking the wind had maybe died down a bit there, but it's certainly still looking quite strong and present in that part of the world. I know a few people in the Eastern Cape, and for them wind is quite a normal occurrence. I don't think we're used to such strong winds in the Kruger region, but it's certainly one of my least favorite weather conditions. I feel like all the birds go into hiding. Most of the wildlife also tends to try get out of it or seek cover. But yeah, gusting wind is rather unpleasant. I can only imagine the strength of those jaw muscles to chew vegetation like that. And certainly one thing herbivores are well adapted to is chewing their food. Obviously cellulose and the structures of plants are quite difficult to break up, hence the need for bacteria in their gut to help break it up. But obviously the more you chew it up, the quicker that process is to extract nutrition. But I get tired after chewing some chewing gum, and I can only imagine how long they have to chew some of their food for. Malcolm, you'd like to know if a giraffe with a broken leg would survive? Yeah, sadly, unfortunately not. A giraffe with a broken leg is very unlikely to survive in the wild. Just due to their size and height, it means they really depend quite a bit on their strong legs to keep them obviously standing and move and escape predators. So yeah, unlike your smaller animals, a giraffe can't really keep weight off an injury for long. Or lying down for extended periods also puts them at risk. And obviously an animal with a broken leg would have to do that quite regularly. So yeah, generally a leg injury for a giraffe is quite fatal in the wild. And it sounds harsh, but that's just kind of how the system works. It's generally how lions hunt giraffe. As soon as they can get them off their feet or that they lose the standing position, the game is essentially over. And that is the giraffe's greatest weakness, is that its balance or if it is thrown off balance like that, it's quite an easy target. It was quite cool to see while I was talking about that, was how the giraffe passed its food down after chewing it. It's always interesting to watch that that movement. I forget the name of the word, I remember it from varsity. And obviously passed a bit more, cut back upwards to carry on chewing and digesting. Or masticating, that's the one word for that, but I actually want to double check myself what's the word. I think it's peristalsis, if I'm not mistaken. That is the act of the esophagus moving the food up or down. just educated myself. So it's actually just a simple term of regurgitation or rumination. When it's passing it back up, obviously it's just regurgitating. And peristalsis is actually just the movement of food along the digestive tract. So I guess a bit of a technicality, but yeah, that's actually rumination. Sorry, very much a biology lesson there, or anatomy 101, but it's interesting to think about these things sometimes. Anyway, I think we've enjoyed watching the giraffe chew its cud for quite a while. We're going to head over to Tao for a bit now. Always some wonderful bird life lurking around Tao. Quite a nice spot to come. That looks like a blacksmith lapwing and a black-headed heron. Quite interestingly, this heron's actually quite close to the water's edge. And like I was saying earlier, you generally find them more in the terrestrial environments, hunting grassland or more open areas. This one may have just come down to the water for a bit of water. It looks like it's preening itself, so maybe just to clean itself up a little bit. But definitely a black-headed heron. I remember when I first started birding, this was a heron that always used to confuse me quite a bit, because I guess to the untrained or more novice eye they look very similar, but if you're familiar with them you can tell it quite quickly apart. But I always remember the thing that always gave it away to me, and it was also some guides that pointed it out to me, was once again the habitat plays such an important role in understanding what bird you may be looking at. Now obviously it's not always a golden rule, you need to rely on a few other factors, but yeah, I think that's what I enjoy about bird watching. It's also almost like solving a puzzle, putting different facets of information together to reach a conclusion. But yeah, fun and games nonetheless. And this heron is quite focused on preening itself, taking the midday hours quite leisurely. I'm sure there's also a crocodile or two lurking somewhere. They're quite good at hiding here at Tao. I feel like sometimes I stare right past them, but I guess that's how you know the crocodile's camouflage is working, if you don't notice them immediately. It would actually be quite interesting to see if this black-headed heron tried to forage or hunt a bit in the water here. I think we've sadly lost a visual of it. I think the camera just reset itself a bit. But I was reading in my bird guide about it that they will occasionally hunt in watery habitats. But I guess flooded grassland would be maybe a better example. But it would be interesting to see if it would maybe try go for some more aquatic prey. Apologies for that, we just moved over to Safari Hook and there was a bit of a technical issue there. At least we've got a beautiful, elegant kudu, and another one coming into frame. Fairly young animals, they're on their way to maturity. And generally when the kudu is roughly at about past the 2 curl mark on the way to its 3rd horn curl, it's quite a mature animal. And looking very alert. I wonder if some predators have not been sighted here in the last couple of days. Quite a few of the animals that have come in here have been quite alert or careful. But then again, it can also just speak volumes more to the characteristics of the specific animal. Kudus are quite cautious creatures, and they generally feel safer in thicker vegetation than out in the open. And often at the first indication of danger, they'll stay very still in thick vegetation and rely on not being seen or heard. I always get excited when I see animals quite alert. I'm hoping for some action to take place. But I think the kudu are just being extra cautious. But then again, you also, if a predator is well camouflaged, you do never know when it is going to appear. Often it looks quite calm just before an ambush takes place. So you never know when your moment could take place. And that's where patience pays off, or sometimes just taking it easy, hoping for the unexpected. Oh, these kudu seem a bit more calmer now. We can see them foraging in the area. I don't think they are feeling too pressured, but they're all quite cautious animals. I think they also hear incredibly well with those large ears of theirs. The springbok look as calm as can be, but yeah, like I said, it's not always maybe a good indicator of the other animals being calm, that nothing is there. Could argue with all the extra sets of ears and eyes, the springbok have reason to maybe be calm. But yeah, that's just the game of life. The predators are good at hiding, and the herbivores are good at detecting, but there is a grey area in between, and the game of survival carries on.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Some rivalries don't need explaining. They're felt. They're etched into history. The All Blacks, the Springboks, head to head in South Africa. Join us for 2 unforgettable tests, from the fiercest rivalry in sport to luxury safari, hosted by a Springbok legend. Rugby and Safari by Wild Earth Travel. The greatest rivalry, experienced the only way it should be.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
Also, the more you try to pay attention, the larger this springbok herd appears. Quite a few animals. I think there's at least minimum 50, if not up to the 100 mark. It's quite a few. And I think this is just a small zone we're looking at. I think left and right of the camera view, there's probably quite a few springbok. And who knows how far back the rest of the herd goes. There's only a few animals actually really in the open. If they all disappeared right now, then we definitely know a lion or hyena or something has come prowling. Maybe even a leopard or cheetah. I guess there's a lot of things that would snack on a springbok. Probably quite a light meal for a lion, but of course a cat will never, or a predator will never say no to an opportunity it's presented with. You can actually see quite a good example of what we were discussing earlier about the way the springbok use different, or utilize different parts of their resource. So we can see some of them are grazing, some of them are browsing, so it makes them quite adaptable. And it's obviously quite important in a very arid and tough environment such as the one here in Etosha. It can obviously get incredibly dry here, so when the grazing is good, you should rely on that, and when the grazing gets bad, move over to browsing, or if there's nice new flush on some of the shrubs, etc., which is quite nutritious and soft and low in tannins, you'll also want to eat that. So being an intermediary herbivore or grazer and a browser probably sets you up quite well for success. I'd actually be quite curious to know what bushes these are that the springbok, I almost want to keep saying impala because that's what I'm used to seeing most of the time, but what these springbok are browsing on, it almost looks like mapanis. Of course there are a few other shrubs that do look different there, but the really dark green ones do look like mapani trees. You can also see I think there's a fork-tailed dronga following in the background there, probably as insects are disturbed with all the feet moving around. There's a bit of a surprise for us. Waterbuck just came strolling past. There comes another one. And there's quite a large bull drinking there at the water's edge. But we've actually been quite spoiled today when it comes to the diversity of the antelope. Seen eland. We haven't seen impala, but we've seen, not that I can remember seeing impala. Seen zebra, wildebeest, springbok, waterbuck, eland. Yeah, that's quite a good haul. Kudu, we've also seen kudu. So quite a dynamic day when it comes to the antelopes. We also saw blesbok, sorry, as I'm thinking, that was another antelope we saw. So quite a range of different antelopes. It's funny how quick one can sometimes forget the things you are rewarded with seeing in the bush, but it is actually, if you put your mind to it, it actually shows you how fortunate you can be, or sometimes you forget your sightings. Quite a few waterbuck present. I think it's at least 4 or 5 individuals we've seen. Once again, thanks to everyone for joining today's Live at the Waterhole session. It's been a wonderful one. I look forward to seeing everybody next time. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much, and we had quite a few interesting sightings today. I see also, to finish off, it looks like we have a Marico flycatcher here, from what I can tell. It looks like it's going to disappear quite quickly though. Bit of excitement just before the show finishes. No, that's actually a goshawker. That's quite a nice surprise. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Looks like a cabal goshawk. Such a cliffhanger.